According to 7 diplomatic and security sources, an exclusive deal that would allow Russian mercenaries into Mali is on the verge of being finalized. France has meanwhile begun a diplomatic drive to prevent the military junta in Mali enacting the deal, which would permit Russian private military contractors, the Wagner Group, to operate in the former French colony. A European source who tracks West Africa and a security source in the region said that at least 1,000 mercenaries could be involved. According to sources, the Wagner Group would be paid about $10 million a month for its services. For more analysis on this, we're now joined by Izak Khomo, who's a Channel Africa producer and one of our contributing analysts about the continent. Thanks very much indeed for joining us, Izak. It's quite remarkable to hear a story of this magnitude. 1,000 mercenaries, $10 million a month. Could this possibly be true?
Well, I will not know. I will not keep a figure, but I mean to say that those narratives come from the Western media. They can be highly sensationalized, and they would actually sort of, as you can see, it's a thing which has been mistaken that the Russians are actually making a headway into Mali. But that thing there, it was expected. I mean, people should remember that France, early on in June, Macron had actually said that they are going to wind down the French presence in West Africa, especially in Mali. And they say that they're going to, the toning down would start in the second half of this year, and it will be complete by next year. So basically, that's not surprising that the Malians have actually turned to the Russians. And not only that, there's been talk of the junta, which actually staged the coup, saying that those people were actually looking at trying to bring in the Russians, involving the Russians in the fight against the insurrections. It will be remembered that that coup, when it took place after the people had taken to the streets, where they came and overthrew the government of the former President Keita. And they alleged that they wanted the Russians to come to a bigger part, and accusing the French of actually stalling and using their presence there as a leverage to come and get political advantages. So that basically was expected ever since the first coup which took place in last year.
I remember that conversation about Russia's influence gaining, and also that people on the ground, essentially the population, had grown tired of French influence and had in part welcomed Russian influence. But let's assess who these Russians are. Is this the Russian government, or are these independent mercenaries that happen to be Russian?
Well, no, that's a very good question. I mean to say that right now the Russian government of Putin is very careful as not to be seen to be heading into foreign countries. I mean to say that the Afghan experience taught them a lesson. Yeah. So basically, they've got a proxy, and the proxy is actually these contractors. But this is a new trend in international interventions, and the trend was started by the Americans. The Americans have got their contractors, military contractors, who they use in Iraq, they use them in Afghanistan, they use them wherever they go. And they also, these contractors actually have subcontractors from Uganda, from other places like that. So that is the new tendency, because basically there is no contractor, military contractor that come from a country and go into another country for operations without having the go-ahead from the national government. It will be seen that these contractors, once they come in, as they've gone into the CAR, they've actually got access to the national military intelligence. The most important thing that I think the Malians are after is actually the satellite surveillance, which would actually cover the whole country and tell them where the insurgents are. Now that's the thing that's also being used in the CAR. The Russians have been successful in actually pushing back the insurgents, basically because of its high tech. And these are contractors. But you find that the Russian government, the Russian state is involved through this military cyber intelligence that they support that they're giving them.
Is this all part of this, modern day scramble for Africa where Russia, China, US are all scrambling to get more and more influence on the continent? And France is holding on for dear life to that which it has enjoyed for years without interference.
No, that is true. And I want to say that the other countries, the newcomers, China and Russia, they're scrambling. I mean to say that Africans have been tired of French in the West. I mean, let's get away from Mali for a change and go and look at other areas where the French have been involved. Let's take a country like Niger. Niger has been slated by the UN as the world's poorest country. But Niger is the world's second biggest exporter of uranium concentrate. The uranium concentrate, the share that Niger gets from the uranium concentrate, which is mined and concentrated by Avira, a parastatal French company, it is just about 30 to 40. In fact, now it's about 50 to 60 American cents a kg. Whereas the ongoing price of that concentrate at that time, it used to be $200 US per kg. Now there's a very good president who, the late Amadou Tangi, who wanted the French to actually up the shares that they're giving to Niger to a point that they actually have a 50-50. The French refused. Now what Amadou Tangi did, he invited the Chinese to open a second mine. But once that was going on, Niger was bedeviled with Tuareg rebellions. But it transpired now through intelligence that those Tuareg rebellions, they were being aided and abated by the Avira French company. The most that Amadou Tangi could do was to expel the manager of Avira. That's not only there in Niger, it also happened in Congo-Brazzaville. Lissouba, Pascal Lissouba, he was a democratically elected president, but he was kicked out. That rebellion was funded by the Elf company, oil company, and he did so because Lissouba had brought in the Americans who offered a better deal in the oil exploration and oil sales than the French. So now you find that basically that the Africans, they are tired of the old colonial masters and they're looking for new partners. And the game changer has been China, whereby China has come in with their 50-50, which is a very important thing. In the oil deals that the ex-French colonies get, they get about less than 10% of profits. The Chinese come and say that they're going to have a 50-50. And that's the thing that the French does not want. And it should be remembered that in Mali, there's a huge, huge oil reserve that has been discovered that stretches from Mauritania, eastern Mauritania, right across Mali into Niger, and actually getting into Chad. Now, that big oil reserve is what the French are after, and that's what everybody's after. And again, there is a lot of gold and uranium. So that is the geopolitical strategy which is taking place, or conflict that's taking place. The French want to stay there.
All right, so it may appear that in the short term, the military junta will get the support it needs for its objectives. What are the long-term consequences, do you think? Because it can't be healthy to have mercenaries being brought into the continent in the middle of conflicts.
Well, call them mercenary or call them foreign troops. It's just the same thing, which basically is under a different name. Now, this thing cannot be a permanent issue But the permanent issue is this, that it will give the African countries a breathing space. The French, the ex-French colonies, in their independence agreement, the French took the responsibility of manning the defenses, where the defenses of those countries were actually in French hands. I think that is going to change. Although Mali does not have that agreement, you could remember that when Mali got independence, it got independence under Modibo Keïta. And Modibo Keïta was one of two presidents who did not opt to be part of the French Commonwealth. The other was Sékou Touré of Guinea. So basically, Mali has got a very old tradition of having relationships with the former Soviet Union, or we can say today with the Russians. That's from the days of Modibo Keïta. But I think the time is coming now that the Africans will have to, and they're doing so now, to establish their own defense capability and capacity. There was a meeting which took place between certain African countries. Mali was involved, and the Russian military extension. It took place, I think, about last month. It was very secretive, and it's very few people and journalists who actually got that information, but we could not come out with it because we could not verify it, but that has taken place. And it should be remembered that 2 years ago, when there was a very big Russia-Africa summit, one of the big topics which was there was this, that Putin offered assistance to the Africans, assistance in the defense sector, as an alternative to what they're having now. And one thing that people are really looking into is actually having access to sophisticated military satellite data, which the Russians are ready to offer anytime.
Izak, we're going to have to leave it there. I'm sure we could talk about these issues at length. I have no doubt that a number of twists and turns will still play out in this story. Thank you so much for joining us and your insights for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, that's Izak Khomo, who's a Channel Africa producer, but also one of our contributors in terms of analysis on the continent. And we just heard that story, of course, that it could be that mercenaries are going to land in Mali. 1,000 of them, Wagner Group, and they stand to gain $10 million a month for their services.